Who were your other kind of comedy heroes when you...
Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke, yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. Because again, he has that very relaxed, almost effortless style.
Yeah. And physical comedy. I mean, both John Cleese and Dick Van Dyke are just incredible with their bodies.
That's something I've tried to incorporate where I can.
No, you're magnificent.
Physical stuff. Yeah.
Seriously love watching you act.
Thank you. I think it's also when you're very tall, like I am. Someone said to me once in an interview, do you think you went into comedy to control when people laugh at you? And I thought that's a hell of an opening question.
You
yes,
first,
exactly. But it has stuck with me because I think there's probably some truth to that. When you're 6'7", people naturally look at you anyway, and so there's something about if you're going to stare at me, let it be on my terms.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
I didn't have that, but I was at age 13, 6 foot and 120 pounds.
Right,
I was scary.
Yes.
Scary. And I went to a prep school, and they had their share of bullies. But the bullies did not know what to do with me. It was like if I hit him, he could shatter, and I'd spend the rest of my life in jail. So they just would leave me alone. And then I also figured early on, I don't know, I'm not like saying this is the way to go in life. I think being confrontive is a good thing sometimes. But I would find the biggest bully on the playground and make him laugh.
Yeah, right.
And then... he was mine. He became human to me.
Yeah.
And I was the kid who made him laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I never remember being bullied, but I think I got in there preemptively by trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And so therefore like you say, I was kind of insulated from the bullying, but at the same time, I think I used humor at school as a bit of a barrier. And therefore I think I never felt like I was part of any gang really.
Yeah.
You know, I was always slightly on the periphery, kind of observing, and got on fun, and it was not an unpleasant experience at school, but it just never quite, because I was using humor to just keep people at arm's length for fear of that bullying attack. Yeah. I wasn't ever really quite part of any circle.
Do you remember when it went from one person once a week, I saw you in such and such, to when it became a torrent of people recognizing you? How does fame sit on you?
Well, I think it was a slow burn. The old analogy of the frog in the pan of water, and you slowly turn up the heat and it doesn't realize it's being boiled alive. Yeah. And I think because I started as a writer, and then I would start popping up here and there on talk shows, or and then started to perform and was on screen, and it was a much more slow burn experience for me. Yeah. I think there was probably an occasion where I remember, there'd be like a kind of gossip column, and they'd have seen me, I remember they said they'd seen me in a Blockbuster video arguing with my girlfriend, presumably squabbling over what movie we were gonna, although I don't remember ever arguing in the Blockbuster anyway. But I remember then you get slightly kind of complacent. Like, I don't know if you might have heard me tell this story before, but much like in Times Square at New Year, in sort of central London, in Trafalgar Square at New Year, there's a big congregation of people for the big countdown and the whole thing. And I was there, and and I'm 6'7", so I'm taller than most of the people in the crowd. So I'm like checking out the scene, and I was young and I was single, and I'm like looking for, so maybe a New Year paramour. And this girl comes up through the crowd, and she walks up to me and she says, "Hey, are you going to be here for a while?" And I thought, here we go. She's probably seen me on TV. Yeah, wants a little piece of Steve, of course. And she went, I said, yeah, I'm going to be here for a while. She said, great, because my friends and I have arranged to meet back at you. I went, sorry? She said, yeah. We need like a meeting point. We're going off to a party. So we just thought we'd use you, if that's all right, because we can see you wherever you go. I was like, She said, yeah, move around. Don't worry, we can see you. I was like, okay. So I would move around. Then finally, I just started people just started gathering, and I would move and they would move with me. I'm like, oh, and then eventually she showed up. She said, hey, thanks so much. And I'm thinking, well, she'll invite me to the party. They went off to the party. I didn't get invited. I went home alone. I'm like, yeah, I was getting a little too big for my boots there on the old celebrity front. Yeah. So it's a strange experience,
Fame,
celebrity. Yeah. Again, no, I think because I was tall, people always looked at me.
I was about to say, it was hard to tell the difference.
I always got stared at, and even now, if people don't know who I am, I'll still get people comment, because I think people think being very tall is like an accomplishment. It's not an insult, So I get a lot of, do you play basketball? And I'll order a drink in a bar and someone will be like, that's a tall order, and everyone will laugh and high five. And I'm like, is that allowed? Can you just, but yeah. So I think that I've always had people gawping.
Yeah. You can have compassion for beautiful women.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Oh, I see what it's like. People stare at you.
Yeah.
Your parents, how are they with your fame? Do you have siblings?
I have one sister, Alex, who's involved sort of behind the scenes in TV and film. So she's worked on a number of the projects, including The Outlaws. But my dad, I think, is quite enamored of my celebrity, partly because we put him in the British version of The Office.
Right.
So very occasionally he'll get recognized, which is a huge thrill for him. He didn't have any speaking lines, but he was a sort of janitor who will occasionally appear like holding some toilet rolls and just stare at the camera, transfixed, and occasionally people will recognize him. But if I'm walking with him, like I'll go for a little walk with him when I go visit, and we'll like walk past his local butcher shop. And he'll just suddenly grab me and throw me in the door. And you're like, look who it is. Yeah. And they'll be like, hey. And I'm sort of like a piece of meat, like a prized cow to be admired by the butcher. But no, but it's, I think there's like a big picture of me on the wall when you walk into the family.
Great. That's great.